My mother sued me over lottery winnings. I didn't even win, it was just a rumor. She planned to pass it to my favored brother. I countersued for harassment and my legal fees. She lost her home trying to fight me. So, here's the setup. I'm 32, the older brother. My younger brother, Brian, who's 28, has been the golden child since the day he was born. I'm talking favoritism so blatant it would make a soap opera blush. While I was working 2 jobs, scraping together every penny for community college, Brian got a free ride to State University and barely graduated with a 2.3 GPA after 6 long years. When I finally bought my first car, a beat-up Honda Civic I saved 8 months for, my parents gifted Brian a brand new Mazda for his 18th birthday. When I got a promotion, they barely noticed. When Brian landed a sales job at a car dealership, they threw a party. You get the picture. My entire life, I was the invisible son, while Brian was celebrated for doing the absolute bare minimum. My parents aren't rich, but they're comfortable. Middle-class suburban life. But every single spare dollar they had, it flowed straight to Brian. New laptop for college, help with rent, co-signing for a car loan after he wrecked the Mazda. Meanwhile, when I once asked for a measly $200 for an emergency car repair, my dad lectured me for 20 minutes about financial responsibility. I never asked them for money again. This golden child treatment wasn't just about cash. Family dinners always revolved around Brian. My accomplishments were met with polite nods before the conversation inevitably swung back to whatever Brian was doing. When I got engaged to my fiancée Lisa 3 years ago, my mom spent the entire dinner asking when Brian was going to find a nice girl. Lisa saw it immediately. She was furious. Me? I was used to it. That's how normalized dysfunction becomes when you live it your whole life. Brian and I? We have no real relationship. Not hostile, just distant. He knows he's the favorite, takes everything, and I've built my life from scratch. Now, fast forward 6 months ago. My life is finally good. I'm a cross-country truck driver, making solid money. I own a small house, my truck's paid off, and Lisa and I are planning our wedding. But this is where things went absolutely off the rails. A high school friend of mine, Jake, won 10 grand on a scratch-off ticket. Not life-changing money, but decent. He posted about it on Facebook with a picture of the novelty check. Totally normal humble brag stuff. But somehow, deep in the mysterious algorithms of Facebook and my family's group chat, wires got crossed. My Aunt Sandra saw Jake's post, noticed we went to high school together, and in her infinite wisdom, decided I must have won the lottery. Not Jake. Me. She screenshotted the post, cropped out Jake's face, and sent it to the family group chat with, "OMG, congrats. So happy for you." Fun fact, I wasn't even in that group chat. Turns out, I'd been silently removed months ago because I didn't RSVP fast enough to some gathering. Classic. So, this cropped screenshot makes the rounds. And instead of anyone at all, actually asking me, they just assumed. My cousins speculated I won $50,000, Aunt Sandra insisted it was 6 figures. By the time the rumor made its way through the family telephone game, I'd apparently won anywhere from $20,000 to $500,000. All based on a Facebook post about someone else's $10,000 win. I had no idea any of this was happening. I was literally on the road, driving a load from Texas to Pennsylvania, while my supposed fortune was being debated in a group chat I wasn't part of. The first clue that something was wrong came when Brian called me. This was weird. Brian never calls me. "Hey man, congrats on the big win," he said, all chummy. "What win?" I asked, genuinely confused. "The lottery." "Don't be modest," Sandra posted about it. I tried to explain. "Brian, I didn't win anything. It must be a mistake." He got quiet, then said maybe I was trying to keep it private, which he totally understood. I insisted there was nothing to keep private. He didn't believe me. He thought I was being secretive about sudden wealth. Told me to enjoy it, and hung up. I didn't think much of it. Brian believing random Facebook rumors seemed, well, par for the course. Then Mom called, 2 days later. Her tone was different. Cold. Businesslike. She started asking pointed questions about my finances, savings, recent purchases, life changes. Why are you asking? I said, starting to get suspicious. We need to discuss your lottery winnings, she replied, matter-of-factly. What lottery winnings? I didn't win the lottery. Don't lie to us, she snapped. Sandra saw the post. We all saw it. I tried to explain again, it was about Jake, not me. She didn't want to hear it. She accused me of hiding money, of being selfish, of thinking I was better than everyone now that I was rich. The conversation spiraled into a lecture about family obligations and how we all needed to support each other. Support each other? I shot back. When have you ever supported me? Wrong thing to say. She went off. About how they raised me, put a roof over my head, fed me, clothed me, and I owed them everything. And now that I'd come into money, the least I could do was help Brian get back on his feet. There it was. Brian needed money again. Turns out, Brian had racked up massive credit card debt and his car was about to be repossessed. He'd told Mom and Dad I'd won the lottery and that I should help him out since we're family. And they, in their infinite wisdom, apparently agreed this was reasonable. I told her again, very clearly, that I had no lottery winnings, no windfall to share. She called me a liar and hung up. That should have been the end of it, right? Weird family misunderstanding. Everyone moves on. But this is my family, where logic goes to die. A week later, I was served with legal papers. My mother had filed a lawsuit against me. She was suing me for $75,000. The lawsuit was absolutely deranged. It claimed I'd won lottery money and was hiding it. It argued that because she'd supported me throughout my childhood, I had a moral and legal obligation to share my windfall. The complaint even included screenshots of Jake's Facebook post as evidence of my winnings. A real attorney looked at this and decided it was worth pursuing. I sat there, staring at those papers in complete disbelief. She was suing me for money I never had, based on a Facebook post about someone else. The audacity was stunning. Lisa was furious. She'd always hated how my family treated me, but this crossed every line. She wanted me to fight back hard. I was still reeling. The lawsuit even specified how the $75,000 should be divided, $50,000 to Brian to establish financial stability, and the remaining $25,000 to my parents as reimbursement for expenses incurred raising me. So, she wasn't just suing me for fictional money, she'd already planned how to spend it. Most of it, naturally, for Brian. I called her lawyer, left messages. Finally reached a paralegal who sounded bored out of her mind. I explained, wrong person in the Facebook post, no lottery winnings, total mistake. Well, if you didn't win anything, she said dismissively, that'll come out during discovery. You'll need to prove you don't have the money. Wait, what? I had to prove I didn't have money I never claimed to have? I never said I won the lottery. I protested. Other people assumed that based on someone else's post. Our client believes otherwise, she said. See you in court. Then she hung up. That's when I realized this wasn't going away quietly. My mother had convinced herself I was sitting on a pile of money and she was willing to sue to get it. The burden of proof had somehow shifted to me to prove a negative. I needed a lawyer. Finding one was harder than expected. The first two basically laughed me out of their offices. One attorney flat out said it was the dumbest lawsuit he'd seen in 15 years and suggested I countersue for harassment. That idea stuck with me. The third attorney, Patricia, a woman specializing in family law, took me seriously. She reviewed everything, asked about the golden child dynamic, and nodded grimly. This is frivolous, she said, but frivolous lawsuits can still be expensive to defend. Your mother's attorney should have done basic due diligence. So, what do I do? I asked. We respond. We prove you have no lottery winnings. And we make them pay for wasting everyone's time. I liked her immediately. Patricia filed a response denying all claims, requesting the case be dismissed due to complete lack of merit. And then? She filed a counterclaim for legal fees, harassment, and emotional distress. If Mom wanted to play legal games, we'd play. My response requested all documentation proving I'd won anything. Bank statements, lottery commission records, anything concrete. I knew they had nothing. Because there was nothing. I also requested sanctions against my mother's attorney for filing a lawsuit with zero evidence. Patricia said it was a long shot, but it might get their attention. The discovery process was fascinating in its absurdity. My mother's attorney requested 2 years of my bank statements, tax returns, financial records. Fine. I handed over everything. It showed exactly what you'd expect from a truck driver making decent money: steady paychecks, normal expenses, modest savings, zero lottery winnings. In return, I requested proof of their claims. They provided the Facebook screenshot. That was it. Their entire case was a cropped photo of someone else's lottery win that they decided was mine. Patricia drafted a motion for summary judgment. The case had no factual basis. I'd provided complete financial records. My mother couldn't produce any evidence beyond a social media screenshot that didn't even show my name or face. The hearing for the motion was scheduled 3 months after I was initially served. Those 3 months were hell. My family went nuclear. Mom called me multiple times a day demanding I drop the countersued. Dad left voicemails about how I was destroying the family over pride. Brian sent texts calling me selfish for not just giving them money to make this go away. Give them money? I didn't have. The circular logic was infuriating. Aunt Sandra posted on Facebook about how hurt she was that her nephew was being difficult. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years came out of the woodwork to tell me I was wrong. The family group chat, which I still wasn't part of, was apparently a constant stream of people discussing how unreasonable I was being. My Uncle Dave, who'd always been relatively neutral, called me one evening. At least he tried to be reasonable. "Look, I know you're upset about being sued," he said. "But is it worth losing your family over? Maybe you could just give them something to settle this." "Dave," I said, my voice tight, "I literally don't have lottery winnings to give them." "I know, but you make decent money trucking. You could probably spare a few thousand to help Brian out and smooth this over." So, even the reasonable relatives thought I should pay money I didn't know to resolve a lawsuit about money I didn't have. The family delusion was complete. I refused. Lisa backed me completely. This wasn't about the money anymore. This was about the principle of not rewarding insane behavior. The court hearing was Thursday morning. I took time off work, wore my best shirt, and showed up with Patricia. Mom arrived with her attorney, a middle-aged guy in a cheap suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Brian came along for moral support. Dad stayed home, apparently too embarrassed. The judge, a woman in her 50s, looked like she'd seen every variety of human stupidity imaginable. She reviewed the case file, and I could see her expression shift from professional neutrality to barely concealed incredulity. My mother's attorney presented his case first. It was embarrassing to watch. He showed the Facebook screenshot, argued there was strong evidence, I'd won, and claimed I had a moral obligation to help my family. The judge interrupted him. "Counselor, do you have any proof that the defendant won the lottery?" "We have the social media post, Your Honor." "This post doesn't mention the defendant by name. It doesn't show his face." "How do you know this is about him?" "Family members confirmed it was him." "Family members assumed it was him based on a Facebook post about a mutual acquaintance." "That is not evidence." The attorney stammered something about circumstantial evidence. The judge wasn't having it. Patricia presented our case next. Bank statements showing normal income, no lottery deposits. A letter from the State Lottery Commission confirming I had no winning tickets registered in my name. A sworn statement from Jake confirming he was the one who won. The evidence was overwhelming because the truth was simple. I hadn't won anything. The judge addressed my mother directly. "Ma'am, do you understand that this lawsuit has no legal basis?" "But everyone said he did." Mom replied, sounding like a child. "Everyone was wrong. You sued your son for money he doesn't have, based on a Facebook misunderstanding." My mother started crying. Real tears. Not the manipulative kind she'd used on me throughout childhood. She finally seemed to be realizing the magnitude of what she'd done. The judge wasn't sympathetic. She dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled. Then she addressed our countersuit. "Mr. Patterson has filed a counterclaim for legal fees and harassment. Given the complete lack of merit in your original claim and the emotional distress caused by baselessly suing your own son, I'm inclined to grant it. Mom's attorney tried to object. The judge shut him down. Counselor, you should have vetted this case before filing. A single phone call to the Lottery Commission would have revealed there were no winnings. Instead, you put your client and her son through months of litigation over nothing. She ordered my mother to pay my legal fees, which had reached $8,400. She also ordered her to pay an additional $5,000 in sanctions for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Total, $13,400. My mother's face went white. Her attorney looked sick. But I don't have that kind of money, she said quietly. You should have considered that before suing your son, the judge replied. You have 60 days to pay or we'll proceed with asset seizure. Court is adjourned. Walking out of that courtroom was surreal. I'd won, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt utterly exhausted. Lisa squeezed my hand, telling me I did the right thing. Patricia looked satisfied. Behind us, I could hear Brian trying to console Mom, who was still sobbing. Her attorney was explaining payment options, none of which sounded good. I didn't look back. I just walked to my truck and drove home. The aftermath was predictable. My phone exploded with angry messages. How could I let it get this far? How could I make Mom pay such a huge amount? Didn't I understand this would bankrupt her? The irony was thick. They weren't mad that she'd sued me baselessly. They were mad that I defended myself and won. Dad called that evening. His tone was cold, fury barely held in check. I hope you're proud of yourself, he said. Your mother is devastated. She might lose the house over this. She sued me for $75,000 I didn't have, Dad. What did you expect me to do? You could have just given her something. You make good money. You could have spared a few thousand to help your brother and avoided all this. There it was again. The expectation that I should just hand over money to make their delusions go away. I'm not giving anyone money for a lottery win that never happened. That's insane. It's not about the money anymore. It's about family. You've destroyed us over pride. The call ended with him saying I was no longer welcome in their home. I told him that was fine, since I hadn't felt welcome there in about 20 years anyway. That night, Lisa and I talked for hours. She asked if I regretted fighting back. I didn't. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to my family's ridiculous behavior and won. It felt good, even though it felt awful. The next few weeks were quiet. No family contact. Patricia followed up on the judgment. My mother had 60 days to come up with $13,400 or face asset seizure. I went back to work, back to my normal life. Wedding planning continued. Life moved on. Then came the financial fallout for my parents. Turns out, they didn't have $13,400 in liquid assets. They'd always lived right at the edge of their means, spending everything they earned. The money they'd poured into Brian over the years had prevented them from building any real savings. They tried to get a loan. Banks turned them down. They tried to borrow from family. Most relatives sided with them emotionally, but nobody wanted to actually hand over that kind of money. Brian, in a shocking display of self-awareness, admitted he couldn't help since he was broke. At least he was honest. 30 days in, Uncle Dave called again. Your parents are going to lose their house, he said bluntly. They're trying to refinance, but the paperwork won't go through in time. They might have to sell. That's between them and the court, I said. Come on. You can't actually let them lose their house over this. Dave, they sued me for $75,000. I defended myself. The court decided they owed me money for their frivolous lawsuit. None of this is my fault. But you're their son. And they're your parents. Didn't stop them from trying to take money I didn't have. The call ended badly. Dave took their side, as expected. The deadline approached. Patricia informed me that my mother's attorney had filed for an extension, which was denied. The court had already given them 60 days. That was generous. On day 58, I got a call from Mom. First time I'd heard from her since the courthouse. Please, she said, her voice breaking. Please drop this. We'll lose everything. You sued me first, Mom. For money I didn't have. I know I was wrong, but please, we're begging you. This was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from her. It wasn't much, but it was something. Did you know Brian didn't actually need $50,000? She said suddenly. His debt was only about $8,000. We thought if you had won the lottery, we could get enough for Brian and save some for ourselves for retirement. So, it wasn't even entirely about helping Brian. They'd planned to take my supposed lottery winnings for themselves, too. The honesty was almost refreshing. I can't drop the judgment, I said. The court decided you owe me for my legal costs. That's not optional. There has to be something you can do. Maybe you should have thought about consequences before suing me. She hung up. 2 days before the deadline, they came up with a solution. They put the house up for sale and took out a bridge loan against the expected proceeds. It was a terrible financial decision, costing them thousands in interest, but it generated the cash they needed. Patricia received payment on day 60, exactly on deadline. The judgment was satisfied. I thought that would be the end of it. Case closed. Everyone moves on. I was wrong. The house sale fell through. Buyers backed out during inspection after discovering foundation issues. My parents were stuck with a bridge loan they couldn't pay back, legal fees from the lawsuit, and no way to recover. They declared bankruptcy 3 months later. The bankruptcy meant they lost the house anyway, had to sell at a loss just to satisfy creditors. They moved in with Aunt Sandra temporarily, sleeping in her guest room while they figured things out. Brian's car got repossessed around this same time. He ended up moving back in with them at Sandra's house. So now my aunt had 3 adult relatives camping in her 2-bedroom condo, none of whom could afford to live independently. The family blame naturally fell on me. If he just dropped the countersued. If he'd just given them some money to begin with. If he'd been more reasonable, if he'd cared about family, if he'd been less selfish. The cognitive dissonance was impressive. They sued me baselessly, lost, faced consequences, and decided I was the villain for defending myself. Christmas came. I wasn't invited to any family gatherings. Fine by me. Lisa and I had a quiet holiday with her family, who were loving and normal and didn't sue people over Facebook rumors. My cousin posted pictures from the family Christmas party. It looked depressing. Everyone was stressed. Brian looked like he'd been living rough. Mom had aged 10 years. Dad wouldn't smile for photos. They'd turned a Facebook misunderstanding into financial ruin through sheer stubborn stupidity and a refusal to admit they were wrong. January brought new developments. My parents found a small, 1-bedroom apartment, converting the den into a 2nd bedroom. Dad's bank extended him a hardship loan for first and last month's rent. They moved out of Aunt Sandra's, taking Brian with them. Brian, at 28, sleeping on an air mattress in his parents' den because he'd never bothered to build a real life for himself. Mom got a 2nd job doing data entry at night. Dad started picking up weekend shifts. Both were working themselves to exhaustion, trying to recover financially. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Got a raise. Lisa and I set a firm wedding date, put an offer on a bigger house that got accepted. Life was genuinely good for the first time in years. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone. March brought an unexpected visitor. Brian. He showed up at my door one evening. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, looked exhausted, his clothes didn't fit right. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. We sat in my living room in awkward silence. "They sent you, didn't they?" I finally said. "No. I came myself. They don't know I'm here." That was surprising. "Mom's a wreck," he said. "Dad's working himself into an early grave. I'm sleeping on an air mattress at 28 because I screwed up my entire life relying on handouts." "That's not my fault, Brian." "I know," he said, looking me in the eye. "That's why I'm here. To tell you I know." He explained that the bankruptcy had forced a lot of realizations about how our family functioned. How the favoritism had actually hurt him by preventing him from developing real skills or a work ethic. How Mom and Dad's enabling had left him completely unprepared for adult life. "I never had to struggle," he said. "Everything was just given to me, so I never learned how to handle problems or be responsible. Now I'm almost 30 and I'm useless." It was the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard from him. "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked. "Nothing. I'm not here to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that some of us realize how messed up this all was." He stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, I'm glad you fought back. Somebody needed to stop playing along with their delusion. I wish it had been me. He left. I stood in my doorway, watching him drive away in his 15-year-old sedan, wondering if people could actually change, or if this was just a temporary clarity that would fade. April brought the wedding. Lisa and I got married in a small ceremony with her family and our real friends. None of my family came. I hadn't invited them. It was perfect. No drama, no tension, just people who genuinely cared about us celebrating our marriage. Lisa's dad had passed years ago, so my dad walked her down the aisle. His speech made everyone cry in a good way. Pictures from the wedding went up on social media. Lisa looked beautiful. I looked happy. Our friends looked like they were having an incredible time. Aunt Sandra commented on one photo, "Family should have been there." I deleted the comment and blocked her. Our honeymoon was 2 weeks in Hawaii. We turned off our phones, disconnected, and just existed together. It was the most relaxed I'd felt in years. Coming home meant dealing with reality again. Voicemails from Dad asking if we could talk. Messages from relatives saying I'd gone too far by not inviting my parents to my wedding. The usual guilt tripping. I ignored all of it. May brought unexpected news. My mother had filed for divorce. The bankruptcy, the financial stress, living in a cramped apartment, working multiple jobs, watching Brian struggle, and the constant family backlash had completely destroyed their marriage. Mom blamed Dad for not stopping her from suing. Dad blamed Mom for filing in the first place. The fighting, apparently, became constant. Brian moved out into a room he rented from some guy on Facebook. Mom got the apartment. Dad moved into an even smaller studio across town. My family was completely fractured, all because of a Facebook post about someone else's lottery win. June brought a letter. An actual handwritten letter from Mom, forwarded through Patricia's office since Mom didn't have my current address. It was 6 pages long. A rambling apology, mixed with justifications, mixed with grief over losing everything. She admitted she'd been wrong to sue me. She admitted the favoritism toward Brian had been unfair. She admitted her pride and stubbornness had destroyed the family. But then, the letter took a turn. She wanted me to understand her perspective. She was scared about retirement. She'd panicked when she heard about lottery winnings. She'd been trying to secure their future and help Brian at the same time. The letter ended with a request to meet and talk, to try to rebuild some kind of relationship. I read it twice, showed it to Lisa. We discussed it for hours. In the end, I didn't respond. Because even in her apology, she was still making excuses, still trying to justify her actions, still not fully taking responsibility. The relationship was done. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. July brought more changes. Brian got a job at a grocery store. Not glamorous, but steady. He moved into a better room. Started posting on social media about small victories, like saving up for new work shoes or finally paying off an old credit card. Maybe he actually was changing. Time would tell. Dad started seeing someone new, a woman from his bank who'd gone through her own divorce. They looked happy in photos. Good for him. Mom was still alone in her apartment, working 2 jobs, posting occasionally about how much she missed her family. The comments were always supportive relatives telling her she'd done nothing wrong and her son was the problem. The delusion continued, even after bankruptcy and divorce. August brought full circle closure. I ran into Jake at a gas station. We caught up briefly. He'd heard about the lawsuit through the grapevine. "Man, I'm sorry my stupid Facebook post caused all that," he said. "Not your fault, Jake. You just posted about your win. My family's crazy. Made it into a whole thing. Still, that's insane. Your mom actually sued you over my 10 grand. She thought it was 75 grand and that I'd won it and was hiding it." Jake laughed. Not cruelly, just at the sheer absurdity. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You should see the court transcripts. It gets dumber." We parted ways. Jake went back to his life. I went back to mine. September marked 1 year since the lawsuit started. A full year of drama, legal battles, family destruction, and vindication. I thought about my mother's letter again. Part of me wanted to respond, to at least acknowledge her attempted apology. But every time I considered it, I remembered standing in that courtroom, watching the judge explain to her that she'd sued her own son over a Facebook misunderstanding. Some things can't be forgiven. Not because the hurt is too deep, but because forgiveness would require forgetting the lesson. My mother taught me that family loyalty only flows one direction in our family. That their golden child worship would always trump basic reason. That they'd rather destroy themselves than admit they were wrong. Those were valuable lessons. Painful, but valuable. October brought the house closing. Lisa and I moved into our bigger place. 3 bedrooms, a nice yard, good neighborhood. We could afford it comfortably on our combined incomes. The irony of moving into a house nicer than the one my parents lost, while refusing to reconcile with them, wasn't lost on me. Lisa thought maybe I should feel guilty about thriving while they struggled. I didn't. Their struggles were entirely self-inflicted. Every single consequence they faced was the direct result of their decision to sue me over fictional money. They could have asked if I'd actually won anything. They could have verified with the lottery commission. They could have looked at Jake's Facebook post more carefully. Instead, they jumped to conclusions, filed a lawsuit, and refused to back down, even when presented with overwhelming evidence they were wrong. That was their choice. These were their consequences. November brought Thanksgiving. Lisa's family invited us over. They were warm, welcoming, and treated me like I belonged. During dinner, her uncle asked how my family was doing. Haven't spoken to them in over a year, I said simply. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be, I replied. It's for the best. Lisa squeezed my hand under the table. Her family didn't push for details. That night, I thought about previous Thanksgivings. Sitting at my parents' table, watching them dote on Brian, feeling invisible, listening to them discuss Brian's problems and accomplishments, while my existence was background noise. This was better. This was what family was supposed to feel like. December brought the final chapter. My Uncle Dave called one last time. Your mother's not doing well, he said. She's depressed, working constantly, living in that tiny apartment alone. She really wants to talk to you. She knows how to reach me if she wants to actually apologize, I said. She did apologize. She sent you that letter. She made excuses in that letter, Dave. That's not an apology. What do you want from her? Blood? I want her to actually take responsibility instead of explaining why she was justified in suing me over money I didn't have. She lost everything. Isn't that enough, Dave? She didn't lose everything because of me. She lost everything because she sued me baselessly, refused to drop it when proven wrong, and faced legal consequences for her actions. That's cause and effect. You're really going to let your mother spend Christmas alone? She spent the last 30 years making me feel alone at family gatherings. She'll survive. Dave called me cold and hung up. I didn't care. Christmas came and went. Lisa and I had a quiet celebration. We started planning for the new year, discussed maybe starting a family of our own eventually. The lawsuit that had dominated a year of my life was truly over. The family that had treated me like a second-class citizen my entire life was out of my life permanently. It's been a crazy journey, and honestly, sometimes I still can't believe it happened. So, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced something this absolutely baffling with your own family? What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.